How about this? The three of them are on a helicopter going to a forward operating base, gets shot down. Now they're prisoners. Okay, I'll buy it.
Nick and Stevie aren't even like, hey, there's Michael. Hey, Michael, what
kind of excited.
What the hell are you doing here, Michael?
Get out of town.
Oh, man, I haven't seen you since back in town.
I mean, they might be shocked by the fact that he just used a flamethrower on a dude.
Burn that fucking dude, yeah.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
Each week, we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie takes to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. Review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all our information on past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, and our YouTube channel, where this week, two of you watched us play Hold Fast. Thank you to both of you for watching and following. Anyway, we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing tonight?
So, Gene, before we get to tonight's film, I was wondering if you could give me a couple moments here to apologize to the audience.
Of course.
Okay, so I'm not above admitting I'm wrong, and I'm often wrong. And when I learn new information, I should adjust my impression, what I think. So we've done a few films about the French and about Paris. We did Ronin, City of Lost Children, and one of my recent favorites, Betty Blue. And I think on those, I actually mocked the French, the accent, their fashion sense, a lot of their lifestyle, which was it was based on a trip I had taken in college to Paris with a bunch of friends. And I had a very negative impression of the city. So I think that came out sometimes where you actually said, well, there goes all of our listeners in France. Recently had the opportunity to go back. Vanessa, Emma, and two of their friends. And Gene, I could not have been more wrong. On the French, Paris, everything, I was dead wrong.
It's not your fault, Big D. We are a Protestant, English-founded colony, and all the media that we consume, I remember from a little kid, it was always the English were very, very tough, and the French were very effeminate and very annoying, and they're surrender monkeys. And even when it's not real history, when you watch anything that's like fictional, there's always a representative of the French, and they're always lacy and effeminate, and they just protest and complain. And that's not the case. I used to be a massive Anglophile, right? The Britpop movement got me very much into everything English. And I got to tell you now, when people say they're going to Europe, specifically when they're going to England, I scoff. I scoff at them. Why would you waste any time in England when France is right there?
No, and I always thought, I thought Paris was dirty, and I thought that the French were assholes. Now I realize they were assholes because I was an asshole. We were drunk college kids in Paris and probably did not represent the United States very well. So we deserved the scoffing and then the bad treatment that we received. The one thing I will say, the French still, the music in their movies, Gene, the fucking circus music, that shit's got to end. But as far as the city, the people, man, I drank lots of wine, no Pinot Grigio, because I didn't want to embarrass the U.S. It was a lot of Chablis, I think it is, Gene, some Chardonnays, a lot of your favorite beer, the Chapelle, I think it's called.
The Chouf?
Yeah, the Schof. And 1664, so a lot of fucking liquor was drunk. I sent you some pictures where I was quite intoxicated. City was beautiful. French people, I apologize. If we still have any French listeners, I was wrong.
Also to our English listeners in Liverpool, Manchester, Sheffield, Middlesbrough, not you. Talking about London specifically. Anyway, Big D, what are we doing tonight?
Okay, tonight's film has nothing to do with either of these cities. It's a very American movie. So one of our great listeners in Detroit, Kevin W., said, please go back to 1978 and review the American epic war drama, The Deer Hunter.
And Kevin from Detroit wrote in and said, this Best Picture winner holds some of the most tragic scenes in film history from some of the best actors of all time. The combination of Robert De Niro and Meryl Streep, who are arguably the best actor and actress of their time, along with John Cazale, who had a perfect batting average in his career and is sharing his last moments on the set of this movie with Streep, who is his girlfriend at the time of his death, and the Best Supporting Actor winner, Christopher Walken, who makes every movie he is in infinitely better and delivers his best performance ever. More words are said through the characters' expressions than their words throughout this movie. And on top of all that, we get a beautiful John Williams theme song to tuck us into the film even tighter. This movie always makes me feel like I'm hanging out with old friends as soon as I turn it on. The beginning wedding scene is akin to the wedding at the beginning of The Godfather, where we introduce ourselves to the characters, but in a way that makes you feel less like you're meeting the main characters and more like you're meeting your buddy's other group of friends. The wedding attendees aren't there as a sign of respect to The Godfather, but out of a genuine love for their friends, and it shows. It's unfortunate that this film isn't talked about in the same breath as The Godfather or Apocalypse Now as one of the great epics of all time. None have as suspenseful a scene as either of the Roulette scenes, and I would argue that neither create as great of an emotional connection between the audience and its characters as The Deer Hunter does. It's a beautifully told story about a terrible tragedy bestowed upon every family in America at the time of Vietnam and every war before or since. This film displays the emotional turmoil these characters endure, who each lose something to the war. One, his mind, one, his body, and one, his soul. I apologize for the length, but at least this movie didn't need a Hearts of Darkness documentary to help the audience say, I love you, baby. With that said, I would love to hear your thoughts on this epic, and I'm going to give the Shat crew one shot to wipe this movie to its rightful place near the top of their rankings. Kevin W. from Detroit, Michigan. P.S. I hope you all enjoyed your time in Detroit for Gene's wedding.
Gene, that's another one of my takebacks, my mulligans. I talk shit about Detroit, and then I learned at your wedding, Detroit's awesome.
Big D, I am 2 weeks out right now from going back to Michigan. Every summer we go back. Sarah's family has a family reunion at Southeast Lake, which is farther north of Michigan. But before we go up to Southeast Lake, we always go to Port Huron, where Sarah's from. And I recently found out that you can buy like a 2-story, 3-bedroom house right on the water in Port Huron for about $200,000. And I'm telling you, right now it's 118 degrees in Arizona. I am tempted. I love Michigan.
So one of the things that I was shocked about when I started watching this and putting my notes together was the proximity to the end of the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War ended in April of 1975. This movie came out in 78. That's really not long after the end of a war to have some kind of a perspective. There was a lot of these films coming out. And if you think about World War II, the films that came out after, it was very like gung-ho, America's a super soldier. We're going to save the world. I think now you get Saving Private Ryan with some years of perspective. This was real close to the end of the war to be making these movies.
After World War II, everyone was obsessed with the soldiers are going home to sing and dance and open up their own resort to respect the general and maybe meet some girls. Big D, podcast listeners know I'm a huge Vietnam War buff. I got into it in high school, read a bunch of books, took classes in high school and college, studied the war in depth, and consumed a lot of media, comic books, novels, films. This is a movie, The Deer Hunter, that I've always lied and said I've seen because I wanted to seem in the know. Like in the 90s, among the cool kids, like you would drop The Deer Hunter, you like name drop it, right? Like Deliverance. And I just would pretend that I got the reference. I've never seen Deliverance, but I know there's the banjo scene. So I just pretend like I know it. With The Deer Hunter, I knew it was De Niro. I knew there was Russian roulette involved. I knew it was Vietnam. I just went with it. So I have no excuse for not having seen this movie. And Kevin W., thank you for making an honest man out of me.
So I think you do have a reason for not watching it. If you watched Platoon or Apocalypse Now or some of the other Vietnam films, you had some like, fuck yeah, action to get you into it. This movie doesn't pretend to be anything else than a big mind fuck and a big time downer. The first time I watched The Deer Hunter, it wasn't because I wanted to. It wasn't fun. There was a college course I took in anthropology. It was like the easy A. You know, you would get an A in this class because the teacher had checked out. He had gotten tenure. And everyone did the class because there was at the end of the year, there was a Vietnam memorial trip to Washington. So everybody took the class for that. And his one big presentation, you had to pick a Vietnam film and then break apart one of the scenes. You had to analyze it. You had to read the dialogue aloud. You had to play the piece. So obviously what we did was the Russian roulette scene. The assignment was the first time I'd watched this film, and it's raw. It's a lot of trauma from Vietnam. This was a one and done for me. I had not rewatched it. I had almost like filed it away somewhere in the back of my mind. It's powerful in a way that I think a lot of war movies aren't, but I don't know if it deserves all the acclaim it gets now that we've had films sometime after that give a more like well-rounded portrayal of what PTSD and trauma and what the guys took home with them.
The Deer Hunter is a 1978 epic war drama about a trio of steelworkers whose lives are upended by fighting in the Vietnam War. The soldiers are played by Robert De Niro, Christopher Walken, and John Savage, with Meryl Streep and George Zunza in supporting roles, and John Cazale in his final film role. The film is based in part on an unproduced screenplay about Las Vegas and Russian roulette. Producer Michael Dealey, who bought the script, hired Michael Cimino and Derek Washburn to rewrite the script, taking the Russian roulette element and placing it in the Vietnam War. The film went over budget and over schedule, costing $15 million. The Deer Hunter received acclaim from critics and audiences, with praise for Cimino's direction, the performances of its cast, its screenplay, realistic themes and tones, and cinematography. It was also successful at the box office, grossing $49 million. At the 51st Academy Awards, Deer Hunter was nominated for 9 Academy Awards and won 5. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Sound, and Best Film Editing. It is Meryl Streep's first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. The Deer Hunter was named the 53rd greatest American film of all time by the American Film Institute in 2007 and selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress in 1996. Let's hit the trailer.
One shot is what it's all about. Deer has to be taken with one shot. I don't think about one shot anymore. The whole thing, it's crazy. Play games? All right, I'll play you games.
In 1968, 3 friends, Mike, Stephen, and Nick, work in a steel mill and hunt deer with their pals Stanley, Axel, and John. Stephen is engaged to Angela, who is secretly impregnated by another man, and Mike and Nick are roommates interested in Linda, who will be moving into their home to escape from her alcoholic father. After catching the bouquet at Stephen and Angela's wedding, Linda accepts Nick's spontaneous marriage proposal. Before Mike, Nick, and Stephen leave for Vietnam, they go on one final hunting trip, and Mike kills a deer with a single shot.
So, Gene, the movie starts out, and we're watching the first act, and it just hits me. We're introduced to the guys, to the town, And it is gray skies. It is brutal. This town, it is busted up bars. It's a steel mill or some kind of like smelting factory. I don't know what the fuck they do there, but it's a rough life for these dudes. And I get in my head already like All the Right Moves with Tom Cruise or Gung Ho. We get to see the Northeast, the Pennsylvania, the town that these people, you know, what do you have to look forward to? This mill's been running since like 1902. And these guys aren't trying to be heroic. They're trying to escape this town. Let's not pretend that these are like flag waving Americans who are trying to, you know, free the people of Vietnam. That's not at all what it is. You know, everybody tries to elevate Pat Tillman. You know, you got a big statue of him in Arizona, Gene, but that is the rare exception. Usually the wealthy, the privileged, they try to avoid conflict at all. They say that the wars are fought on the backs of the poor. And I think this is a perfect example of that. And these guys in this town, they just wanted to get out of that town. Nobody was screaming, America, fuck yeah. It was, I can't keep working in this goddamn factory.
Yeah, I mean, look at where they celebrate these things, right? It's in the VA hall, essentially, right? That is your only acclaim. You work and maybe you served, and that's about it. But Big D, I took the scenes of this town so differently. Maybe it's because I lived in Chicago and Lima, Ohio, and I married into a Lake Huron family. But this town, Clairton, Pennsylvania, to me, it didn't look bad at all. I wanted to go there. They got a cozy bar owned by their friend. There's a beautiful church. There's this rich Slavic community. You got a bowling league with your own shirts, gorgeous mountains nearby for hunting. I would take that over Vietnam. I don't know why any of these guys are leaving.
Really, Gene? That's kind of funny because I don't see you living in Lima. Sarah, she's not up on Lake Huron, is she?
No, but yeah, I have to keep in mind, not to get too personal about this, but the reason why I live in Arizona is for my mother. Otherwise, I never would have left the Midwest.
So you would stay in Lima, right? Because Lima is the hub.
No, I try to work my way to Detroit or Chicago again.
Right. So I understand that you idolize this town. You idolize the leather, the down and dirty blue collar American life. But you know, it doesn't seem as great when you grow up there and there's no way out. And these
just Gene from Scranton.
Just Gene from Scranton, yes. And, you know, I got to talk about here the wedding. So Kevin talked about it, and he's very wise. He compared it. I thought this was like Coppola. This is The Godfather. The wedding, it's a slow, beautiful burn, and Coppola did it. It's almost as if we are a passive observer of the wedding. Very little dialogue. They're going around to different conversations. It's really long, and the camera's just observing. And they're letting us float around, and we're starting to meet the characters. There's no real plot progression, just character moments, a few glimpses of people smiling, people having fun, people drinking, people getting a little bit fucked up. It's emotionally grounded, and the technique gives us a way to absorb the world. We understand later on the tragedy and the impact it has on their lives. But Gene, at 45 minutes, this movie is 3 hours, I think, right? 45 minutes, people. We are still at this wedding, and we start to see every little nuance of the wedding, the setup of the wedding, the pre-party, everybody's getting dressed, the after party. It goes on and on and on to 45 minutes. And I'm wondering, I'm like, I understand you want us to like the characters, to know the characters, but the pacing is way off. This is supposed to be a Vietnam film about the tragedies and coming home. It's way off balance, and this needed to be pared down.
I get that art is not one size fits all. Podcast, for instance. Some people can listen to Joe Rogan for 3 hours. Okay, I can't. This podcast, we always try to keep it to an hour out of respect for people's time. My favorite podcasts are like 12 minutes long, right? I want it short and sweet. Books, I like them longer. Films typically sit in that 1.5 to 2 hour framework, and giving yourself the 3 hours or more to tell the story, it's a beautiful thing. And I'm sure that there are people out there who really appreciate that kind of a movie. They want to let everything really breathe and sit with these characters for a while. Gene Lyon's personal opinion, this whole fucking movie is in desperate need of an editor.
Yeah.
I understand that Michael Cimino is a kind of focus on the characters, not the story kind of guy. And I have a pretty good attention span, but this movie is slow. Like, we're going to have a wedding. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's show some people talking. about the wedding. Now, let's look at some people getting dressed for the wedding. Now it's loading the car for the wedding.
Wait. First,
Now,
you also have to have the parents.
yes,
you have to have
parents.
the mother complaining about the wedding.
Mhm. Now, here's some ladies that we're going to see later at the wedding, but here they are ahead of the wedding. There's Angela. She's in a wedding dress. Look, it's the church where nothing's going to happen and nobody's saying anything. And now we're in a reception hall. Also, here's what a wedding looks like. At one point, I paused the movie to go to the bathroom, and I wound up angry with myself because if I had taken a piss, made a sandwich, and walked the dogs and come back, I would have missed absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
But there were key moments that they could have distilled this movie down into that would have made it very powerful. And I'm going to try not to get emotional talking about this. But as Kevin mentioned, The Deer Hunter was John Cazale's last movie. And he was batting 1,000, right? He made 5 major movies, and they are legendary. The Godfather 2, Dog Day Afternoon, The Conversation, and The Deer Hunter. And at the point when they were making The Deer Hunter, he was dying from lung cancer, and he knew it. And you can tell. At the time, as Kevin mentioned, he was in a relationship with Meryl Streep and very close friends with Robert De Niro, who was physically helping him between shoots. So when you see him dancing in that wedding scene and he's framed between Streep and De Niro, these legends, right? I got a few tears in my eyes. It looked like a farewell. It looked like a final celebration. There's a final scene where they're all sitting in a bar and they're drinking together. And it was the final scene that they filmed. So in all of the shots that they got for The Deer Hunter, the last thing they did together, these actors, was to do the bar scene. And you could feel it was a farewell. And this guy, this is Fredo from The Godfather, right? He is so good at being vulnerable and insecure and twisted. When I used to watch him as a kid, I hated his face. But as an adult who has done more than 400 movies for this podcast, I realized just how irreplaceable he is as a talent.
Well, I mean, the credit to him is I had no idea. I didn't know until you said that he was dying. And this is the second time. We had Gilda Radner recently in Haunted Honeymoon, that she was also dying. And the fact that they were able to go out there and put a performance on screen that as a casual, I'm not as emotionally connected to him as you were, but I had no idea. And I just thought, he was putting on a performance. And God, Fredo, now I feel guilty. I wanted to punch him in the face.
Yeah.
Because he is that character that's just weaselly. You don't trust him. And, here his character later on does some shit that he deserves to get punched, but he is so perfect for the roles he got. And in a short filmography and a short career, you're right. He hit it out of the park.
I think about this all the time, Big D. If I were to be diagnosed with cancer tomorrow, right, I would quit my job immediately. I'm not going in. I am not spending another day at work. The fact that actors like Gilda Radner, like John Cazale, will say, yeah, the last thing I want to do before I drop dead. He didn't live to see the theatrical release. The last thing he wants to do is to make this movie. It shows you how much they care.
Well, you think about Chadwick Boseman for Black Panther. Mm-hmm. If you go back and watch some of the interviews that he did promoting the film, he said, I don't know that I'll be back again. I don't know that I'll do another sequel. He was talking about the fact that he knew he was dying and he would never see a second film. So the true professionals, the true actors, and who understand and love the craft, they put it above everything else, and it's admirable. And I appreciate his performance now, Gene, knowing what he was going through.
Also, imagine looking like that and bagging Meryl Streep.
It's a weird dude.
Charisma on that guy.
Yeah, definitely.
He's the Tony Soprano of actors. In Vietnam, Mike, now a Green Beret, accidentally crosses paths with Nick and Steven, who land in a village during an air assault mission. The three are soon imprisoned by the Viet Cong in a cage along a river and forced to participate in games of Russian roulette. To escape, Mike convinces their captors to increase the stakes by putting 3 bullets into the revolver cylinders. When the next 2 chambers luckily fall on empty, Mike and Nick turn the gun on their captors, killing 2 and overpowering the others. Nick is wounded in the leg, but the 3 escape.
So, Gene, Vietnam films, we've done a couple. They all treat the introduction of the characters, kind of the pre-war then the war, then the after the war. And they treat it differently. Like you had Full Metal Jacket. We get the first half of the film is in-depth basic training. It's them joining the military, getting acclimated, they're drill sergeants, the whole bit. Platoon, you get none of that. They get fucking dropped off. They all treat it very differently. Born on the 4th of July. We get a lot of the before, then he joins. And this movie takes a new approach that I have never seen before. We get an hour of the fucking wedding, the planning, the post-wedding, the deer hunting, all that shit. And then at about an hour, Gene, you talked about going to take a piss or get a drink. I turned away from the screen for a moment, and the deer hunter immediately cuts from the hometown bar. They're all singing to the chaos of Vietnam. We're not talking about Vietnam, like choppers flying in and we're getting some like overpowering score. No, it turns to Vietnam. There's a helicopter arriving. Nick and Stevie and some other guys are on a helicopter. We don't know what the fuck they're doing. Mikey is already on the ground. He's injured. He's in the middle of a burning building. He seems like he's been in a firefight. I don't know how he got there. There's no context how any of this happened. What was the mission? What were they doing? Within a minute, I have no idea. Then they're all captured. They're sent to this fucking brutal river compound and they're playing Russian roulette. The transition was so abrupt that I thought I had had a corrupted file. I went back, rewinded it to make sure that there was no transition. There was no lead into it. I don't say I needed 30 minutes or 40 minutes of basic training, but help me do something. Give me somewhere in between Platoon, which was nothing, and Gallipoli.
You're being kind in this assessment. I am a Vietnam War buff, and even I was like, okay, explain to a stranger what just happened in this scene. I'm like, all right, so we got a U.S. helicopter. It's blowing up a village. So I'm assuming that's air cav. Okay. Then we see Michael, and he's in a pile of American bodies. So what I'm assuming is, as I'm piecing the story together in my head, is air cav got called in for an airstrike. Michael was in a recon unit that hit this village. They got ambushed. They called in the air cavalry. Air cavalry comes in. Makes sense, right? That's basically what recon units were sent out to do in Vietnam, was get shot at and then call in the air cav. But then we get this Vietnamese guy. He shows up just by himself in this tan uniform, and he's finding the villagers' hidey hole and dropping a grenade into it. So I'm like, okay, Vietnamese guy, tan uniform. This guy must be ARVN, right? So South Vietnam Army. But then Michael gets up and sets his ass on fire. So I'm like, okay, so there was a joint ARVN and American strike on the village. They're doing a joint operation. But this Vietnamese guy, he decided to go rogue and he's like killing civilians. So Michael's going to put him down. Then the air cavalry, they circle back around. And who's on the helicopter? Of all the fucking people in Vietnam?
Exactly.
It's Nick and Steven. Here they are.
Yeah.
And then, so they're there. And then Charlie pops out of the bushes. Somehow the helicopter no longer matters. And we're POWs. I spent so much mental energy trying to put together a story that made this scene make sense. And I was so pissed when I learned that Cimino just wanted it all to be ambiguous. And that sounds like some hand-wavy bullshit to me.
No, it's fucking bullshit. That's lazy. You could have explained it in a way that could have been emotional. And it was so abrupt. And if you've not seen it, people go back. And the fact that they're on there, I was having flashbacks to Lucas with R2-D2 and 3CPO. Did I get it right? 3CPO?
C3PO.
C3PO. Yeah. Fuck. Well, you know what I mean? The fact that those guys show up everywhere at the right time. I'm like, how did these guys get placed in the same unit? That woman's walking around the background burned with her child. There's so much. And yes, if he meant to be ambiguous, mission accomplished.
Yeah. How about this? The three of them are on a helicopter going to a forward operating base, gets shot down. Now they're prisoners. Okay, I'll buy it.
Nick and Stevie aren't even like, hey, there's Michael. Hey, Michael,
I'm kind of excited.
What the hell are you doing here, Michael?
Get out of town.
Oh, man, I haven't seen you since back in town.
I mean, they might be shocked by the fact that he just used a flamethrower on a dude.
Burn that fucking dude, yeah.
Well, the trio floats down the river until they're found. Wait, before I move on, hold on. And I'm going to try to make a connection here. Listeners, please stick with me. Lord of the Rings. Okay, Lord of the Rings. If you read the books, they spend like an hour talking about a tree or a shield or some dude's hair. And then it's like one paragraph on an entire battle. But when they made the movie, they're like, hey, this is a movie. You can see the hair. You can see the shield. You can see the tree. We don't need to waste time on that. You see it. We're taking all those words, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and we're showing you that on screen. So now, because it's a movie and you paid $12 to go see it, and you got your popcorn and your drink and your friends and your date or your kids, we're going to see a cool battle, right? Yeah, maybe let us see some fighting because it's a Vietnam War movie.
Maybe. I mean, you want us to understand the impact PTSD has on soldiers. Maybe show some combat, Gene.
Yeah, I don't know.
Imagine, let's cut that out of Saving Private Ryan. We didn't need that opening scene. Let's just show them getting Oppum with the typewriter and starting off on the mission. I don't think it has the same impact.
Little Edith Piaf, and it's lunch. The trio floats down the river until they're found by an American helicopter. Nick boards and is rescued, but Steven falls from the helicopter and breaks both his legs. Mike carries him until they join an ARVN convoy fleeing to Saigon. Nick is treated at a U.S. military hospital and released with PTSD. French businessman Julien Grinda lures Nick into a gambling hall where Nick interrupts a game of Russian roulette, pulling the trigger on himself. Mike happens to be present as a spectator. Again, just happens to be there. But Nick and Julien hurriedly leave. Hollywood, if you're listening, fuck AI. Hire me, and I will clean up all of your scripts the way only a journalist can. Here we go. Everything we've seen so far. The boys, they go to Vietnam. While they're in Saigon, okay, they didn't have to be POWs at all. They witness a Russian roulette game, and they're like, whoa, this is really exciting. And they get into it, okay? And then one day, they're doing aircraft shit, helicopter crashes, they get hospitalized. They didn't have to get captured. They just got hurt, okay? Steven, he loses some limbs in the crash. Nick, he has PTSD from the shit he's seen, and Mike has a beard, okay? Nick, he goes AWOL, develops a drug habit, so he starts having to play Russian roulette to support his habit. There was no need to be POWs and fall out of a helicopter and meet the Frenchman. You can tell that this Vietnam side story, it's shoehorned in. And honestly, I can't believe I'm saying this, but this movie would be better if they had just gone to Vegas.
You see, but here's the issue. Without the Russian roulette scene, the POW scene, is this movie remembered? If you ask anyone on the street, go poll 10 people, hey, what do you remember about deer hunting?
No.
They're going to remember the
wedding.
Oh, yeah. They're going to remember the Russian roulette. Without that iconic imagery, this movie is not as acclaimed as it is today. So yes, your story would work, but Gene, with the absence of combat, with the absence of anything going on in combat, we don't even get like the Platoon, where it's questionable. What is the U.S. doing? The atrocities of war, the rapes in the villages, and we get the Kevin Dillon beating up that poor, villager who was disabled and he thought he was alive. Without any of that, we needed some trauma in order to make this happen. And my question, though, Gene, is you talked about here the 3 bullets. What was the reason why? I understand that Michael, he's got a plan. I'm going to get the 3 bullets. We're going to overtake them. Why would any of the actual people running this ring, the Vietnamese, why would you say, okay, I'm going to load 3 rounds into this gun? It doesn't benefit them at all. 1 bullet's enough. You get more rounds to bet, betting rounds. You get more different betting rounds. Somebody's going to get shot. If somebody says, put 5 in there, I'm going to say no. No, that's not a good idea. We're not going to do it. No. Why would you do it, Jim?
I think they're bored. Like you're just hanging out on the river every day. I mean, listen, if we want to really get into it, okay, if you are Viet Cong and you capture a fucking Green Beret, that is a high value prisoner, okay? You're going to want to send that guy up to like HQ, basically, and I know that this is a remote like jungle, but these are holding areas, right? Where you would move them to somewhere because leadership's going to want to interrogate those guys. They've got intel, right? They want to do that. So that's one thing. The other part is, let's say you do get them to give you 3 bullets in your gun. Why are you pulling the trigger on yourself at all? You got 3 bullets in the gun. It's not going to get any better.
No.
What if you fuck up and die?
No, and Gene, basically, as quick as we get to Vietnam, it's almost as quick as we get back home. We're in Vietnam for like a short vacation. It's like a weekend trip. And then we come back to town, and now we've had all of this gunplay. It's been traumatic. And they go back out, they go back home, and you've got Stanley now, your favorite actor who was dying at the time. So I'm gonna tread lightly here. I don't want to upset you. But Stanley is waving around that fucking revolver like it is a party favor the entire movie. He's been showing it. I'm like, this is Chekhov's gun. This has got to come back at the end. He's waving. He's pointing it at his friends. He's pulling it out in the car when they're drinking. He's spinning it. He's pulling the trigger. And I'm like, this is not a good idea. At this point, your friendship has to end. He eventually disarms him. Michael has had enough of it. Disarms him, punches him, throws the gun away. This is a traumatic experience for somebody coming back from the war. Is there any excuse for Stan the way he acted in his gunplay?
I know there's a contingent of the audience that's listening to us and thinking we're fucking idiots because we don't get like the symbolism and what all this stuff's supposed to mean. We do. Okay. So like the gun here, right? The difference is that this is America back home where they don't respect the lethality and the reality of war, that they throw war around like it's no big deal. And we just experience this right now, right? You're dropping mops on Iran and you've got Israel firing missiles into Palestinian territory. I had this conversation with my mom. She's like, well, they're smart weapons. They just hit exactly what they're supposed to hit. Like nobody's dying, right? Like shit's not being destroyed. And I think that's the idea here, is that Stanley is the civilians back home in America. They treat guns like it's no big deal because they've never had to deal with the reality of it, where you've got a guy who went to war. He's coming back and he's triggered by how lackadaisical they are with the gun. I get that. But reality, real world? No, there's no place for treating a gun like that. It was giving me hives.
You see, but you go out in the desert and you shoot guns.
Yeah.
You shoot at targets. You have this whole group of people going. If one of your friends started waving around a weapon, loaded, unloaded, and treating it without the respect it deserves, what would you do?
The King Bee, sometimes when I'm setting up targets, he likes to point the gun downrange. And I don't like it, but it's always way off. I mean, we're talking 20 degrees off from me. At range, right? At like 50 yards. So I don't think it's like going to hit me realistically. I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm somewhere in the middle. I also don't like when people are like way too careful. One time I planned a shooting trip with some friends, and one guy, Scott, he refused to come because I was bringing a cooler of beer. And to be clear, like, we don't drink beers while we're shooting guns. We just you go to the desert early in the morning, you shoot while it's still cool out. And then, you sit back, you have some snacks, you wash your hands, of course. Then you have some snacks, you hang out in the wildlife in the desert, have a few beers. Dude was like, I'm not going. If there's going to be alcohol, there can't be guns. I'm not going. His loss. I think there's a middle ground there. Don't be a Stanley. Don't be a Scott.
No, I would be more confident with you drinking a 12-pack than with King B sober. I think you need less King B, more alcohol.
I don't know that he's ever taken a firearm safety course. I should ask him about that.
I guarantee you he leaves his weapons with a round chamber.
100%.
1,000%.
He leaves guns on the counter in his living room with the door unlocked and goes to Ace Hardware.
Yeah, he's worse than Stanley.
Yeah. Imagine you're a drug dealer who leaves loaded guns on the table. Hypothetically. What was Gary Oldman's, what was that character?
That's what I was thinking about. Jeromance.
Yeah, he's like Jeromance.
God. Less professional. Less fucking... Yeah. Nobody's scared of King B, but there's still guns around. He's going to get himself robbed or shot.
When Mike returns to Pennsylvania, he avoids a welcome home party until all the guests have left. He goes home to Linda and learns that Nick has deserted. Angela, now a mother, has slipped into catatonia following the return of Stephen, who has had both of his legs and one arm amputated. During a hunting trip, Mike stops himself from shooting a deer and returns to the cabin, where he finds Stan threatening Axel with a pistol. Mike takes it, inserts a single round, and triggers an empty chamber at Stan's head. At a veterans hospital, Steven shows Mike that he has been regularly receiving large sums of cash from Vietnam. Mike realizes Nick is the source of the payments and insists on bringing Steven home to Angela.
Okay, so I jumped the gun a little bit there with the whole revolver and the hunting trip. That happens in this block. Before that, we get to see Michael's return home, and he comes back from Vietnam. He's looking sharp. His uniform is pristine. His medals are gleaming. And he is a hero returning to our dark and gray and sad town. He's the highlight, Gene. What else do you do? You get up, you go to work, you go back home.
Why do you hate America?
I don't hate America. I'm not the one who moved out of Lima. Okay, so I think you need to do some introspective soul searching here. You're not the old timer who meets him and he shakes his hand. And you're going to tell some war stories. Mike looks good. He's composed. He's in control. He's fit. And as the audience, we can see, we already know that we saw the whole Russian roulette scene. We don't know what else happened. We don't know what horrors he has seen. And this is the welcome home that every soldier dreams of. He's the hero. He's the center of attention. Every place he goes into, they're like, hey, it's Michael. Hey, Michael, come here. The kids are running over to him. And you know what was so sad is this is the best it's ever going to get. And I was confused. I thought he had gotten out of the military at first. I thought this was his return home. He had been discharged. He had the whole traumatic experience. I don't know how they fucking redeploy this guy after the experience with the Russian roulette and the whole helicopter shenanigans and the whole river fucking the broken bones. And it's bad, right? But he comes home and this is the peak. It is all going to unravel from here. And you know it. You see it in Mike's eyes that there's never going to be a day better than today.
I feel incredibly petty bringing this up because of all the other shit that I've already complained about. But I was totally distracted by Mike's beard and his hair and his decision to wear his uniform everywhere he went. Like you said that you thought that he was out. I was reading this as like he was out, but he couldn't stop wearing the uniform. Like he had gone crazy, right? I thought he had gone crazy because I get it. Like you're a Green Beret and that's pretty badass. But the Army in the 60s, they're not going to allow you to fly home in a uniform with that long hair and a beard. You have to go to a base before you go to America. It's not like you just go to the airport in Vietnam and then just fly home, right? And when you get to said base, they're going to take a look at you and they're going to go, well, Mike, you're going to need a shave and you're going to need to cut your hair before you can wear that uniform and get on that plane. And I know this is artistic license, okay? Mike's facial hair is supposed to symbolize alienation and detachment, but it's just too artsy for me. And Big D, you said something very smart earlier in this episode where you were talking about how we've just become more sophisticated in filmmaking and the way that we show these things. There are subtle tells, little things you can do. Having him have the beard simply to symbolize alienation and detachment, I think it's an insult to Robert De Niro, honestly. I think he can evoke that without having to have a certain look.
Gene, I think it was more transformation. That this is no longer Michael. This is a changed man. Look, he's withered. He's changed. The war. He's not the same person he was before. But even on leave, up until today, if you're on leave, you're expected to maintain your grooming standards. You can't let your hair grow. You can't let your beard grow. If you were special forces, maybe that could have explained the hair. But no, it was just to show the people of the town, like, wow, this isn't the same guy who was here before. But I don't understand why the people, after everyone is like, Michael, you're great, you're a hero, everybody is fucking with this poor dude. He's coming back into his life after a couple of years, and he's trying to figure out what's been going on. He wants to learn some simple things, Gene. What happened to Steve? Angela, the wife, she's catatonic. She doesn't speak. She starts writing notes. She no longer communicates. She doesn't give him an answer. And the silence of the scene, it's frustrating me. I'm like, fucking tell him where Steve is. And the movie doesn't do anything. Everyone seems to be hiding something. So Mike, he's grasping. He's trying to adjust to life back in the town, the horrors he has seen, what happened to his friends. Is anyone helping him? No. Give him the simple fucking explanation. Where is he? I get the trauma fucks up everybody. Mike, the guys who went to war, the guys who are back at home in town. But somebody treat him like a human being. Why is everyone acting like there's a big surprise, a big secret? Tell him where Steve and Nick are. It's not too much to ask.
I think some people genuinely don't know where Steve is. I think others might know where he is, but they know that he's happier in the VA hospital and he does not want to come home, which he's pretty adamant about. Like, I don't want to leave. But most of all, I think Angela and the others are victims of their age. I had to remind myself that these characters are all in their mid-20s. And before the war, they're pretty jovial. Like, you see the way they're celebrating at the wedding. You see the streaking scene, right, with Mike. You see the guys going out hunting and, you know, they're polishing off a 30 rack and leaving a dude in the woods while he's taking a piss, right? They're having a good time. They're silly. They're kids, right? Everyone's partying. Everyone's goofing off. Everyone's living these small town lives. They don't have a great global perspective. They don't have wisdom. They're not emotionally sophisticated. They're probably not super well educated. I don't think they know how to process Stephen losing his limbs. You had these three friends who were full of life. They left the town. And when they come back, one of them's AWOL and the other one is missing 3 limbs and in a hospital.
It's a simple thing, Gene. He's a war hero. He fought valiantly. He was injured. He's being treated. He's at the hospital. He's trying to get better. He didn't do anything to be embarrassed of. The town just simply say he's being treated. He was hurt. It was horrific. He broke his bones. He fell off of a helicopter. He got fucking shot himself in the head. This is the story you lead with, Gene. You don't bury it like he's an embarrassment.
Totally agree. I totally agree. Well, Mike returns to Vietnam and discovers Nick has become a Russian roulette pro. At first, Nick doesn't recognize Mike, who tries to bring Nick back to reason by invoking memories of their hunting trips. Finally, Mike enters a game of Russian roulette against Nick to get his attention. It works, as Nick recalls Mike's one-shot mantra and smiles before pulling the trigger and killing himself. Mike and his friends attend Nick's funeral, then retire to John's dim bar. Moved by emotion, John begins to sing God Bless America in honor of Nick, and all join in.
So, Gene, you talk about like a Russian roulette pro. This film presents Russian roulette that as if it is this high stakes underground gambling ring in Vietnam. But I have so many questions. Okay, is this plausible? I didn't do the research on it because I want to talk through it with you. Unlike like organized fighting, like blood sport, right? That makes sense. You have some guys that get together, they fight, then they'll come back again. You have some rivalries. Russian roulette, this is a built-in expiration date. There's only one round. If you don't survive, you die. There's no coming back. There's no returning champions. There's no like win streak. This defies logic because the odds eventually catch up to everybody. It's not exactly a sustainable event that you can say, we're going to keep doing Russian roulette tournaments because everyone is going to die at some point and you're going to lose people participating. Yes, I know it adds tension to the movie. It explains why they have PTSD, but the movie treats this like people just are, just not even question it. Like, oh yeah, it's a big thing in Vietnam. It's a big thing in Vegas. Gene, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Big D, you know I love games. I don't even care about winning. Like, playing is enough. Games excite me. I do not understand the appeal of Russian roulette. There's no skill to it. There's no decision making. Why is anybody watching this? You might as well be betting on coin flipping, right? It doesn't make any sense. And for those of you who are not familiar with the game of Russian roulette, we should explain. This is not like roulette when you go to a casino and you bet on a number or a color and you can win or lose, right? They keep going until someone dies. I would totally understand it if it was you're a pro and they put one round in, you spin it, people bet on whether you're going to die or not, you pull the trigger, and then that's it for the day, right? But no, you pass it back and forth.
But again, I think it seems like there's a third option. It seems like before you pick up the revolver, you can back out. So maybe there's 3 betting options. You won't shoot yourself, you will shoot yourself, or you'll back out.
What's fucking wild to me is that there are people who strategize like hypothetically about Russian roulette. And one of the rules is you're allowed to fire it as many times as you want while it's still in your hand. So if you want to like fuck the other guy over, I guess, you pull the trigger multiple times to like leave it more likely that they're going to shoot themselves. Here's the thing is the people who've been gaming that out don't understand how odds work. Okay. Cause I know what they're thinking. They're thinking I pulled the trigger once. It was a 1 in 6 chance. Now when it goes to that guy, it's a 1 in 5 chance. Right. But if I pull it twice, then it's a 1 in 4 chance. Right. But that's not how it works. It's always going to be a 1 in 6 chance because you're one, like you did the first one. So
correct.
What are you
but
doing?
They also, it looks like they start spinning it in between passing it off. So it's not even like the odds would get worse and worse.
Well, that's when they get to Major League Roulette in Saigon, right? But backwoods, the minors in the farm league, I don't think they spun it at all.
Well, you know, there's game theory, Gene, for rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
There's not professional Russian roulette, but there is professional like rock, paper, scissors that goes into the psychology of what you throw following somebody else's throw and as it progresses. So I guess there's a way you can reduce the odds. So maybe if anybody out there, if you've ever been to Vietnam or Southeast Asia and you've watched some of this live Russian roulette, please educate us, people.
And just like Jaws made people afraid to go in the water, you guys should also know that Russian roulette was not a thing among captured American POWs. Okay. The Vietnamese were not making Americans do it. This was an adaptation of a story about Vegas that they moved to Vietnam. The two things did not go hand in hand. But my biggest issue with The Deer Hunter is that they didn't show us what the appeal was of Russian roulette. Every good movie that tackles an unhealthy behavior depicts the seduction behind that behavior. Okay, Train Spotting. In order for us to understand why they were doing heroin, they had to show us how nice heroin can feel and then show us how it ruins lives. Scarface, okay? If you just had Tony Soprano with his nose all coked up, super paranoid at the beginning, you'd be like, well, why does anybody want to do this? He built power. He built an empire. It's glamour before the paranoia and the violence and the addiction. Less Than Zero, Casino, Wolf of Wall Street, all of them start with why you love it. And you could see yourself in that life. And you're like, God, that looks fucking cool, right? The Deer Hunter, it never establishes what Mike and Nick get from Russian roulette. And there are ways you can answer this. Show us that there's something that clicked, right? No pun intended, in those moments, something they felt, right? Do they feel invincible? Is there a comfort in letting go of trying to control your life? Is there power in not being afraid, right? Give us something other than, PTSD.
No, but the simple answer is they've been so desensitized by war, the things they've seen, the things they've done. They're emotionally numb, that they don't feel alive. Show us, right, that each time Nick wins, he feels alive. He feels excited. That it's the only time he feels like his life is worth living is when he pulls that trigger and he survives. That momentary, like fix, like if it was drugs. But it goes back to that simple thing that we talked about, Gene. The honest answer in this movie is, without showing the horrors of war, without showing us what these guys went through, what they did, the traumatic experiences, there is nothing else. You have to fall back on the PTSD being caused by the Russian roulette. And you could have showed us a montage of horrible things happening, the atrocities. Show us what the fuck led up to that village. And that would have been enough. But instead, it just becomes they do it because they do it. And I don't know that that's a good enough answer for me.
Well, now's the time of the podcast where we give our Shat score for The Deer Hunter. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's a shooter, a cigar, and a dance with a beautiful bride. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie. It's saying no to champagne. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your score for The Deer Hunter?
So I'm in a weird situation here, right? How do I, as a humble podcaster, Gene, with you of some 10 years and 400 and something films, how do I go against 24 award wins, 27 nominations? How do I know better than they do, but I have to. I was originally thinking 1.25 wipes, right? But the movie, it's bloated. It hurts the emotional impact of the performances and of the subject when it is not boiled down to showing us the impact, why it happened, explain why it happened. Don't give us, I meant to have it be ambiguous. Then you meant for this film not to be impactful. 3 years after the war, maybe that wasn't enough time, but it did seem to work for Apocalypse Now. Platoon later on with some more time worked. Full Metal Jacket, Born on the 4th of July. Man, I feel terrible. I was going 1.25, but I got to go 2 wipes. I think we were so blinded because the war had just ended, and you nominated a second film, Coming Home, also in that same year, that they were just so like, I don't want to say like fucking just so what do the kids say, Gene? Like glazing, or what do they say?
Yeah, glazing.
Yeah, I don't want to say that they were glazing this film or the genre of the Vietnam War, but man, this is, other than those few scenes, it's a lot of sloppy editing. I got to go 2 wipes.
I can't remember the last time I was this bored watching a movie. This is the Joe Rogan experience of 70s cinema. Wildly popular. Lots of people love it, but completely undisciplined and unfocused and dull. The best moments of this movie were when the friends were together on the hunting trip and at the bar. Loved those scenes. Those scenes were great. I was into it. I was connecting. I thought the acting was fantastic. De Niro, Walken, Cazale, and Zunza, who's also the chonk doctor from Instinct. They did some solid work that was lost in the bloat of this film. I do not blame the cast for this. I do blame the editing. This is an atrocity of editing.
Yes.
I have to go 4 wipes. This is a really bad movie.
And hold on, before anybody, Gene, before anybody says anything.
Yeah.
I don't want our audience, if you're out there, be self-aware. If you were previous Gene Lyons who wanted to say like, oh, I've seen this movie to be cool, or you think you know what it's about, before you get on us, go back and watch it. Sit down for 3 hours and watch this film. And if you come away with your same memory of those few like 5-minute clips or those videos that you see online about the Russian roulette, then you can come at us. But until you do that, it's a lot of false memories and the greatness of a film that is not necessarily deserved.
Well, with 2 wipes from Big D and 4 wipes to me, this gives us an average wipe score of 3 wipes for the Deer Hunter.
Okay, so now I'm glad I just said that fuck, because people are going to hear these movies that's compared with, and they're going to just immediately lose their minds. 3 wipes ties this with Christmas Vacation, Commando, Revenge of the Nerds, Blade Runner, Boondock Saints, Over the Top, Grease 2, Mortal Kombat, Red Dawn, Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, Smokey and the Bandit, Dark City, Uncle Buck, and Police Academy.
Blade Runner. There you go. Blade Runner, another epic film. Incredibly boring. Are there parts of it that blew my mind? Like Rutger Hauer's speech? Yes. The set design, incredible, right? Daryl Hannah, wonderful. But is it a long, boring movie? Absolutely.
And just so people know, like Platoon, 0.75.
Platoon's genius.
And I think also Saving Private Ryan, what did we give that? I know Roger fucking hated it, so he probably ruined it. But yeah, if we do see a good, compelling story, we will give it the score it deserves. So we're not being contrarian just to be different.
We're 2 men in the midst of our midlife crisis. There's nothing we want to see more than a fucking war movie. We love war movies.
We do.
But this wasn't a war movie, Big D. This is a movie about the human condition.
Yeah, and Saving Private Ryan was 0.33. So even Roger gave that a 0.5.
He just disparaged America's greatest generation. That's
yes,
all.
He did.
And then they came home and beat their wives and were racist. Yeah. All right. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week's going to be a very, very different film. We're going to go from multiple Academy Award winner to Hiccup is a Norse teenager from the island of Berk, where fighting dragons is the way of life. His progressive views on weird sense of humor make him a misfit, despite the fact that his father is the chief of the clan. Tossing into dragon fighting school, he endeavors to prove himself as a true Viking. But when he befriends an injured dragon named Toothless, he has the chance to plot a new course of his people's future. Commissioned by Cheryl D. And Gene, already there, we found out what the trauma is, what's going to happen, what's going to lead him. Whew, I think that the Deer Hunter could have learned something from next week's film.
And it's a delightful 90 minutes long.
And it's so damn cute, Gene.
But you guys are going to be so mad at us next week.
It's
like,
so
fucking mad.
We're going to fanboy, Gene.
I'm going to glaze that dragon.
Oh.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, so much for commissioning The Deer Hunter. Thank you, Cheryl, for commissioning our upcoming film. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, host@shatpod.com, and tell us how wrong we are. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail about how wrong we are, you go to shatpod.com, use the SpeakPipe feature on any page. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. Review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
Welcome to Dragon Training. Today, you will learn to fight dragons.
Pain. Love it.
Let's get started.
You should come by sometime to work out. You look like you work out. I guess it's just you and me, huh?
No, just you.
Focus, Hiccup.
Can I transfer to the class with the cool Vikings? Whoa. Has anyone ever tried to train a dragon?
No one's ever lived to tell the tale.
It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you. Let's see if this works. We're gonna take this nice and slow. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Whoa!
Get down!
It's okay. You just scared him.
I scared him?
Everything we know about them is wrong. Let me show you.
Either we finish them, or they'll finish us.
Fire!
We don't have to fight them. Whoa. Go, baby!
No matter how this ends, it ends today.
What are you gonna do?
Something crazy.
I'm in. Me too. Sign me up.
I love this plan.
Go.
DreamWorks How to Train Your Dragon.
It's like the size of my...